So again, thanks very much to all of you for your time today, and Michael for putting together this merry band. So SoloSegment is focused on increasing leads and revenue for large B2B companies. And again, I'm going to say B2B on every chart pretty much because that is our focus space. We do have clients who are in the business to business space, but have some transactional businesses. That is to say, they have some online commerce capability, but generally that's not where we add the most value. We're really focused on companies that are doing business with other companies, and deals are largely closed by sales reps, whether they're inside sales reps or sales reps who actually, well, not in this day and age, but in normal times, would actually go out and meet with somebody. And that is the kind of business model that we best support. And our technology focuses on their websites and making their websites more effective at delivering a personalized type experience. But we do it in a very unique way. And we do it by using anonymous data and AI to deliver a personalized experience. And I'll delve into a little bit more why that's unique. But suffice to say that a lot of today's digital technology tries to figure out who you, the person, are. And both regulatory and industry changes and the headwinds that we're seeing kind of universally are going to make that personal data harder and harder to get, harder and harder to manage. And that's why having this unique position on how to do that, achieve the same results, increasing leads, increasing revenue using anonymous data, is a unique value proposition that we deliver. So why is this important? Well, if we think about any company, some company, a specific company maybe that has an awesome customer experience that seems to know what you want before you want it and then is able to deliver that. If you were to think of a company that could do this, you would probably be thinking of Amazon. And so Amazon and pretty much every retailer these days, right? If you're going to play in the game, you have to be really good at developing that insight in the B2C, in the consumer side of things. And you are able to do that because there are a lot of technologies that allow you to harness personal data, right? Know everything about the person and use that data for good purposes, right? To deliver, stuff that you want in front of you on the screen, and to guide you when that's not the right thing, to guide you to what you might like. And so they're using personal data and the technology that exists today to do that. But B2B marketers, they struggle with this, right? In the commercial space, it's a much different environment. So if you're Underwriters Lab, so you're certifying companies, the safety of companies' products, well, if you're a manufacturing manager and you want to learn more about what UL is doing, you're not giving your data to UL so that they can personalize the experience in the same way you might give Amazon or some other retailer that data. So largely commercial websites have to deal with this large group of people who are coming to the websites who have the same expectations that they have in their B2C lives. They have the same expectations in the B2B relationships, but unfortunately, these B2B marketers can't make it work because they don't have the personal data that fuels traditional personalization technology when a vast majority of their owners are anonymous. And yet they still have really important problems to solve. First and foremost, it's how do you most easily connect people with the stuff that they want? And B2B marketers today try to largely do that through marketing campaigns. So they will craft a custom campaign. They will send those out in generally emails, or they'll use Facebook or LinkedIn to deliver very targeted ads. But they can only do that for people who they think might be good targets. Not who they know will actually be good targets, because again, they don't generally have that personal information. So this creates a low yield or a low return on their marketing activities. And equally, when they are able to target, sometimes the reality of what the content they're driving people to doesn't meet the expectations of the people who are going to that content. And in marketing terms, that's bounce rates or exit rates are fairly high. And if that's unfortunate, because a lot of the visitors, especially those visitors who use site search on a website, who come to a website and search, they're much more likely to want to do business with a company. And if you're kind of forcing the bounce, that's a real problem. Not only are you getting low yield on your marketing activity, but you're also, those customers who are most interested in doing business with you are the ones who are not being satisfied. And I said earlier about the lack of personal information. Some companies are making a significant investment in technology. If you look at any company that buys Adobe's platform, you're spending millions and millions of dollars just on the software. You're probably spending equal amounts of money on your own staff to develop content, to, kind of satisfy the appetite of those technologies. But you're struggling. And we hear this again and again from prospects. We did some market research last year. We hear this again and again, the ROI on these technologies that were essentially, birthed in the B2C, in the retail side of the business. And now they're trying to be adopted in B2B. The ROI just isn't there because you're in this continuous struggle to feed the beast with some sort of personal information. And of course, that then means that you're going to just, on a long-term basis, struggle to make this work. And, your time to value equation is extremely long. And so the B2B space is really at this very moment, and we'll talk a bit about the impact of COVID and what that means for a lot of these businesses, but they're at a moment when they're beginning to realize that the plays they've been running for many years now are not the successful plays for the future. And that's where we have identified opportunity and are having success in our business. So our technology is good for our customers because first and foremost, it's easy to deploy and it works with the data or lack of data that they already have. But more importantly, it's better for their customers, right? Because the prospects and customers who are coming to the website are going to get that same value prop that, they get in their B2C lives, that they get from Amazon, that the thing that they're looking for is going to be much easier to find. It's going to be much easier for them to do business. As Michael said earlier, we have 3 products, SearchBox, GuideBox, and MatchBox. They're all focused on essentially improving the ability for people to find things on a website and to convert. Recognizing that in the B2B, in the commercial space, conversions don't mean drop it in a cart and buy something, right? The best conversion is somebody who contacts a sales rep. But there are a lot of micro conversions that happen in B2B transactions because these are very long buying cycles for many of our customers. So their customers might spend months researching and negotiating and ultimately coming to a purchase. So we're looking to drive also the micro conversions that our technology indicates are important to progressing an opportunity, whether that is downloading a white paper or engaging in some sort of discussion online, or even, again, a contact form. Our focus is on how do we increase conversions at every point in that journey. SearchBox is a technology that works on the search engine on a company's website. So you land on ul.com, you don't see anything in the navigation that indicates where you should go, and you do a search. That's where SearchBox helps. And while we could talk a lot about how the product works, just the key point is that we have a proprietary set of data that we capture about search success. So we know when visitors are successful based upon patterns in the data that our technology can discern, and we can use that indication of search success in a variety of ways, right? We can use that to make search results more relevant. We can use that to drive better, and a better experience when people are typing in things into search. So there's lots of ways that insight into successful searches can be used. But at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that whatever content somebody is looking for is at the top of that search results, so they are getting to that content as quickly as possible and not doing a lot of what I think all of us experience on Google often is that pogo sticking behavior, right? You click on something, no, it's not right. You come back, you click on something else. Our goal is first click success. Somebody sees a result, our data tells us that's the right result, and that in fact, when they click on it, they are able to progress their journey forward to conversion. GuideBox helps with navigation. So you're on the website, you're getting into the topic that you're interested in, And what's happening in the background is GuideBox is monitoring the things that you're doing, the content that you're looking at. It's using natural language processing, machine learning models. And what it's trying to discern and essentially predict are two things. What are you trying to achieve during this visit? And what piece of content is most likely to help you progress towards that goal? And so you can see this little gray bar at the bottom. This is on UL's website. And here's an example of where we're presenting some recommendations of content that are relative to a journey where you might be interested in battery and energy storage. But again, what we're trying to predict as you navigate through the website is what are you trying to achieve, and to make sure that you achieve that in the moment, not knowing that this is Jane on the website and we have, months worth of data about Jane. This is knowing that you are an anonymous visitor, you are behaving in certain ways, and the model predicts based upon those behaviors and all the historical data that we've been able to gather, all the information that we've been able to discern from the content itself, what you're trying to achieve. Again, with the goal of increasing the likelihood that you are going to convert, whether that conversion is a download the white paper or ideally, contact a sales rep. And of course, this matters. GuideBox is an area where it's really easy to kind of discern performance. This is some data that we did on a case study with one of our clients. And again, good ROI on the product itself. But what really matters initially to marketers are these second two metrics. It's the content engagement and the reduction in exits, right? Are they keeping people on site? Are they getting a better yield ultimately from the marketing activities that they've been doing to get and attract businesses to their website and visitors to their websites? And MatchBox is finally a technology that that is, for those of you who are familiar with taxonomies and those sorts of things, it is an auto classification technology. And what we're trying to do is to use the natural language processing here to really understand what content is about. If you can understand what content is about at the machine level, right? So a machine can do it. You can use data about content to make it more findable. The way this sort of stuff is traditionally done is humans do it, right? They create an article or a web page and they hand classify content. They, might click a box and say, this is about product A, this is about industry B, and they do that by hand. Of course, if you're one of our target clients, you've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of web pages of content. So tagging them and maintaining all of that content is impossible, right? You're never going to spend the amount of money that is required to do that. And so what MatchBox does is it allows you to automate that. It allows you to automate the ability to make sure that your content is accurately categorized. And that helps a variety of use cases. That helps internal employees find content that they want to promote. It helps customers find content. And this data also fuels SearchBox and GuideBox. So it's a technology that's behind the scenes on both those products as well. But this is an example of one of our clients' taxonomies, one of their classifications of their content. And again, all done by a machine, no human did this. And it allowed them to increase their visitor success rate by about 5 points. So it's a tremendously powerful technology when it's deployed alone. It can also be a tremendously powerful technology as it works with SearchBox and GuideBox behind the scenes. So who are our customers? First and foremost, they need to buy marketing technology. And we really kind of put those folks in two boxes. The first is these digitally advanced companies. So this is most of our target audience, right? These are companies that make significant investments in marketing and marketing technology. They're spending 5 to 10% of their revenues on marketing and marketing technology. And they likely have a lot of the products that we consider competitors. And you see some of those on the one pager that Michael shared. But they're largely dissatisfied with the results they're getting. We have customers who have Adobe, and those platforms are robust and effective at many, many things. But one of the things they're very poor at is dealing with this anonymous visitor problem. And so these companies are very good for us because we can talk about that problem, right? And I outlined earlier a couple of those problem statements, but the problem for them really is, are they getting the time to value? Are they getting the ROI on the investments they've already made? And can we help them progress that? The other side of the equation, and we have several customers like this, are kind of the digital laggards. So these are companies and honestly industries that are largely late to the game, haven't made a big investment. They're generally investing less than 5% in marketing and marketing technology. And they very much see the opportunity, right? Especially now that, we're living in this world where trade shows are not happening, where conferences are not happening. And so that was the source for a lot of these digital laggards leads in the past, right? There was a study done recently and said that the top 3 places that a lot of these companies got leads were, it was email, websites, and events, kind of in that order is where leads came from. But if you look at the same group of companies, where do sales come from? Sales came from events. So those were the highest quality leads that they were generating, and those are no longer a thing. And again, people are not going to be returning to trade shows anytime soon, despite how interested companies are in holding trade shows. And so we expect for the next 12 to 18 months, this is going to be a significant opportunity. We've already seen that happen in our results so far this year. In the first quarter, we had a very good first quarter. Year to year, the first quarter was up 57%, despite the fact that that March was a very slow sales month because people were just starting to deal with the reality of what was going on. But the second quarter has been fantastic. So far, our signings are up 167%, and we're not done yet, right? We've still got a couple of weeks to run out in this quarter. So we're going to 2 to 3x, well, we've already 2x'd. We're probably going to 3x our growth in the second quarter, just because a lot of these digital laggards are realizing with events and trade shows gone, this is where they need to focus. So we've been spending a significant amount of time talking to some of the digital laggards in our pipeline and engaging with those in our marketing campaigns to bring those folks into the fold. What do the Firmographics look like? Clearly, it's a commercial business. B2B is the way to go. Some of them do have either a consumer-facing business like John Deere, or they might have a transactional business like a company, Lord, who's one of our clients. They're generally large, and this means not only large that their websites are large, because our engagement model is making sure that unfindable content can be found. So if you've only got 20 web pages, you don't have unfindable content. But if you have 100,000 or 500,000 or 3 million web pages, you do have a findability problem. And the companies are generally larger. I provide these firmographics as guidance. We have several companies that are in the $100 to $500 million range as our clients, but they are good for us. They might be a little smaller than we are targeting, but they're good for us because they're complex. This last thing really trumps everything else. It is content complexity, lots of complex products and service offerings, and it's just hard for humans to sort that out because most company websites are organized like the company's organization chart, not organized in a way that makes sense to people who are approaching them as customers. So complexity is the thing that really trumps everything else as we think about who would be a good customer for SoloSegment. From an industry perspective, you see this list on the left, which is kind of our current customers, other companies in our pipeline, or companies that we will be targeting who have similar characteristics to those industries that we're currently operating in are indicated on the right. And, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but it really is this, this COVID challenge that has invigorated our pipeline and allowed us to help close more business, especially here in the second quarter. And equally, we see this extending into our third quarter pipeline as well. A lot of our clients rely heavily upon trade shows and industry events and even sales events. They do regional sales events, and they're not happening. Now, everybody is betting on, since, pick a state is relaxing their stay-at-home rules or whatever, that they'll be able to start having trade shows again in the third or fourth quarter. But what's largely going to drive that is not the appetite of event organizers to put on events, it's the appetite of humans to attend those events. And when you look at that data, it is very low. A recent study I just looked at says that most people say, I think it was only 20%, 22, I think it was 22%, said they would attend a trade event this year. Everybody is looking to second half actually of next year before they see that us humans will be willing to go to any event, whether or not it's held. So we expect that this environment for our target audience is going to persist, and that we're going to see this continued shift to digital, not only on the behavior of prospects and customers, but on the investments that our target audience is making. And so, we also expect this to be a persistent, because persistent change, because once you've made that investment, you're going to want yield off of it. And so while we don't expect trade shows to go away anytime soon, we expect that there is going to be a fundamental shift. There is ongoing a fundamental shift in the behavior of B2B marketers and how they think about the relationship of marketing spend to technology versus marketing spend to events. And, part of our successful sales pitch to many of these companies has already been, hey, some of that money you have that's sitting, unused in your event budget, yeah, I know you're going to take some of it and save it because you're concerned about revenue in the future and earnings in the future, but you should reallocate some of that event spend into digital. And that has been a very compelling, 2 of our largest deals this quarter were made on that basis alone. And in fact, a very compelling chart that one of our prospects shared with his management is he created this chart that was very simple. It was like number of leads from events in 2019, number of events being held in 2020, gap, right? What is the gap in leads? And as you would imagine, he had 100% gap, right? He was not going to be generating any leads from events, and he needed to make investments in other areas. So it's been a pretty compelling part of the story as we've talked to these prospects, and certainly they are getting that, and they're having those discussions internally to help, kind of further the sale internally. So we expect this to be a good shift from us from the perspective of growth, but also I expect in the long run, it's going to be a permanent shift. Would people shift 100% of their event money to digital? No, but I expect that, a good part of that is going to be persistent over time. So that is what I have for you today. A little bit about SoloSegment. We're excited to be working with the network. And Michael, thanks very much for setting this up.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Also, I don't know, is it possible to do a quick live demo with one of the sites? Steve, or no?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My microphone just cut out when you started talking. Could you?
Sure. Yeah. Is it possible to do a live demo, perhaps with GuideBox, so just people see it in action?
You bet. You bet. There's no risk to doing a demo on short notice at all. So let me just pull up a company website here.
If you want, you can test it first and then show it to us.
Yeah, you bet.
And by the way, while Steve is doing that, if anybody has a question, feel free to either enter it in the chat or just unmute yourself. Don't be shy. There's a lot of information here. I had, fortunately for Steve and SoloSegment, when I met with most of you originally, GuideBox was one of the products I described as, an example of the types of products we're representing. Okay, so Steve is sharing. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, what's very interesting about, we were selling the SearchBox product for a number of years before we really got our machine learning game straight, and GuideBox essentially became possible. And what's really interesting is that a lot of our prospects start with, are interested in GuideBox, but end up buying SearchBox. It's really just, I think GuideBox is a bit of the shiny object. And the search thing, the price point's a little lower on search, so it's an easier way to get started. But but it's very interesting that that's one of the ways that that kind of the sales process starts, as GuideBox is pretty appealing from that perspective. So this is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They have been around for since the late 1800s. Their focus is on helping mechanical engineers make safe products. And they got their start back around the time that, steam boilers and whatnot and steam furnaces and all those sorts of things were becoming very popular, but they were very unsafe. They blew up a lot. And so that's kind of how they got their start. But they've been around for a long time. And as you'd imagine, they have a lot of very technical content that's very difficult for folks to find. And so I'm just going to do a search here. So SearchBox, and by the way, ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, they have all of our products. They're our oldest client and certainly our best client. And so they have our search technology running in the back end, in the background, and they also have GuideBox running, and they also have MatchBox. I just wanted to start here with a search. So as I'm typing here, a very mundane thing is happening, right? You're getting this type ahead as I type a search request. I'm getting these recommendations of things I might be looking for. And while many search experiences have this sort of thing, what's very different about this is, remember what I told you, we have a unique success metric, a unique set of data that we generate based upon visitor behavior. And we use that in lots of different ways. And one of the ways we use this is we're not just doing a search here of things that are spelled like the thing I'm typing. What we're doing is we're making recommendations based upon phrases that are successful. And so you'll notice that boiler and pressure vessel code comes up first in this list because our data says that that's the best way to search on this topic, is to use that actual phrase. And when you get to a page, you're then going to have the most relevant information about boiler and pressure vessel codes. Before I talk a little bit about how the data is being used on the search results page, I did want to show you over here on the left-hand side of the page, under this refined search segment, this is where MatchBox can be seen, right? It's hard to visualize taxonomy and natural language processing and whatnot, but we have taken the 3 million pages that ASME has and run this through our MatchBox technology to identify the topic and industry of all of that content. And then we are able to automatically label those 3 million pieces of content in their content management system, in their database, with the appropriate label of that content, so that it makes that content more findable. And so one way they're using that data is in their search experience. You can go take a look at and say, well, I'm looking for information. Let's just go to engineering. I'm looking for information specifically on boiler and pressure vessel products. And so this will kind of sort down the search results to that topic. So this is referred to as a faceted experience, but it's one way that MatchBox data can be used, is to allow you the ability to take all of those labels that you applied to the content and allows you to kind of sort the search results. And again, in the good old days, this was done very manually. As people created a piece of content, they would hand code it. And not only is that like a productivity hit, it's very hard to do that, honestly. It is also just virtually impossible to maintain, because if you change a label somewhere, it's very difficult to retrospectively go back and change all the content, because the meaning of that label might have changed over time. But using AI technologies like natural language processing, we're able to do that in a very automated fashion. The other, so that's MatchBox. Again, SearchBox, we're using the data. The way this data is ordered in search is largely affected by the SearchBox data. So as people interact and as we gather, dozens and dozens of searches about boiler and pressure vessel codes, we are able to know which of the search results that's presented over time is the most successful. And what our technology does is it over time nudges that right answer to the top of the list. So it makes their search engine much more effective without a human having to do anything, right? It's all automated and search gets more effective. And one of the reasons it's so important for search to be effective is because searchers are 2 to 6 times more likely to buy. Because if you think about it, if I'm on your website and I can't find in your menu system what I want, if I'm persistent enough to go search, you know that I really am interested in what I think you have, but have been unable to find. And so it is, behooves everyone to make sure that their search experience is super effective, because these are your highest propensity to buy prospects. Now, GuideBox handles the navigation side of the equation. So again, I'm going to focus on boiler and pressure vessels. And so you see in this gray bar in the bottom of the page, you see GuideBox's recommendations. So GuideBox is making 3 recommendations here about what content might be meaningful for you to see. And apparently ASME has this slide off to the side after some period of time. But here's an example of where they're using that data to make specific recommendations. So if you're on this certification, so this seems like a general certification page about their certification offerings, they're making 3 recommendations. So the first recommendation that GuideBox has determined might be relevant, is you want to see the pressure vessel code and maybe buy it for $16,000. And again, here's an example of a B2B company with a transactional sort of business. So all of our clients are not necessarily pure offline transactions. So about 15% of ASME's business is a transactional done on the website where people can purchase things like the codes and other documentation. But again, and here GuideBox again is making recommendations in this page for other things that you might be interested in buying. So, here's the same thing with binders. What's interesting about GuideBox, and this was an observation the client made. So again, I'm going to go back to the prior page here. So this is an example of GuideBox saying, hey, maybe you're interested in this thing, the code with binders, as opposed to perhaps the code without binders back here. What's interesting is this is like any other commerce site. If you go down here, they have a related products section. So this is driven off their content management system, where their content management system is making some guesses based upon how the content has been coded about what products might be related to this thing that we were looking at. And one of the observations that the client made was GuideBox recommending this same product with binders is a much better recommendation than their content management system makes in this related product section. And so they've actually prioritized a piece of work on their side to bring GuideBox into the page template using our API so that they can have much more effective related products right in the page template, as opposed to having GuideBox present the data in this modal that appears at the bottom of the page. So GuideBox is, again, continuously looking at what are you clicking on, what are you looking at, making some prediction of what you're trying to achieve, and then trying to make very smart recommendations in real time on what content you should look at next.
Steve, that's great. Thanks so much for the demo.